The thing I wanted to cover today is an article. I just skimmed it before I hit the live stream, go live button today. And it seems to be pretty directly in conflict with the vision that I put forward of a transparent denomination. So I thought it would be good just to come through that and see how my ideas hold up against his and what's there to be said on the other side of it. So this is Keith Sweat. I've read some of his stuff before. This one's called Beauty, Boats, and Bishops. I found Sweat's stuff to be thoughtful and helpful. So he's in the GMC with me. He says, I desire to speak about the selection of interim bishops for the GMC. However, I must first talk about truth, trust, beauty, and building boats. Because if we don't understand each other on the first things, we will not understand on the last things. Yeah, that's a good, yeah. Somewhere I once read that if prophets seem to rail so incessantly about how bad things are, it's because they have a vision of how beautiful things can be. I've seen how beautiful things can be. Sometimes I rail about how bad things are. I don't think he meant to put a period there. Sometimes I rail about how bad things are. Yeah. I've seen how beautiful the church can be. I have a vision of a renewed and restored church being birthed into the world, one with a solid foundation in the person of Jesus Christ, a church committed to sound doctrine and with truly evangelical leadership. I see the church as a devoted steward of the sacraments and the things of God while unhindered by cumbersome bureaucracies, unresponsive institutions, and legions of sinecures. Actually, I don't know that word. Look up sinecures. A position requiring little or no work, but giving the holder's status or financial benefit. Okay, so in this context, that would be just like some simplistic treatment of a topic that doesn't actually do much. Okay, so that would be what he's alleging as bad institutional stuff that he doesn't want. I've seen a church which, when she gathers in one place all the fullness of her charisms, that's, I think, the dispensations of the Spirit, she does so with rejoicing, beholding brothers and sisters face to face, even those with whom we disagree on certain weighty matters. I've seen how magnificent the church can be. The church is the most wonderful gift Christ left us other than salvation itself. The church is the only boat Christ left us to get us across this world and into the next. Therefore, I tend to rail at people who want to poke holes in that boat. I will celebrate one of the essential traits in the character of the restored church. That trait is recognized as trust, or sometimes by its close kin, stewardship. The first term identifies the sacred obligation, the other refers to the office and manner by which we exercise it. Trust and stewardship. So the notion of stewardship is we don't own what we have. Rather, it's God's and we're stewards of it. Trust, I take to be the notion that you just believe that a person is going to say or do what they say they will do. So I'm on board with stewardship being a value. And if like an office in the church is considered a trust from God, I think that's the sense in which he means it, then I'm 100% with him. If it means that we have to trust those in leadership to uphold their trust well, then I find my place in a disagreement for right now. When stewards receive a trust, then they must set aside their own interests, whether professional or personal, or the interests of any other organization. Further, they have a responsibility to be faithful to the stated mission of the source of that trust and not to act or use the resources of their trust in incompatible ways or purposes. Yes, 100%. If I follow my neighbor's lawnmower, borrow my neighbor's lawnmower, then I have a duty to care for it in the manner that best serves the interest of my neighbor. The lawnmower is a trust, and I am the steward of the lawnmower. I might choose to leave my lawnmower out in the rain, my lawnmower that I own. That might be why I must borrow one, but I will not treat my neighbor's property as my own. Stewardship means treating it as though it is not my own, even if it involves extra inconvenience and cost. I like that definition. In the church, we call this stewardship. I have a car. It is God's car. When he has no specific task assigned for it, I am allowed great liberty to use it for my personal benefit and recreation, provided that when I get a call at 2 a.m. from a brother or sister in need, then I will take his car, God's car, and go to their aid. Further, I may not use the car to deliver a shipment of heroin, even if it is to my personal benefit. The car is a trust. I am a steward. I have a responsibility to be faithful to the stated mission of the source and not to act on or use the resources of the trust in incompatible ways or purposes. I have witnessed from a distance how beautifully our newly formed yet ancient church has stewarded her trust. Those who are stewarding our transition have done well at keeping trust. If there has been an occasional failing of an individual here or there, then either I have not seen it or it was corrected in the Christian way. I would affirm, by the way, that those, well, and I've said it before, those in charge of the GMC have done an amazing job of putting it all together. There are many decisions they could have made. They had the power to make them, yet they did not. Many matters of doctrine and polity have been set aside not because they had no opinion, but because they discerned that they had no authority. They have not confused the power to act with the authority to act. They have kept trust. This is true. It's true that they could have overstepped a lot more than they have. I wouldn't even say that they've overstepped. You have to create some structure before you get everybody together. And so I think that they have been wise in knowing what structure they can create with not much resentment or dysfunction, and what decisions they could have made that is too far. Sweat continues, they have faithfully developed proposals for our life together, just as they were charged to do. Whenever the action on a proposal could be delayed, the proposal was submitted with sufficient explanation for its implementation and sufficient time for alternative proposals to come forward. When a matter requires immediate action, they have always done so with both an explanation and a process by which the church may offer correction. Is that true? Yeah. I mean, there's always the general conference option, yeah. If anyone believes that our transitional doctrine and discipline does not go far enough on one matter or seems incomplete on another, or even in error on yet another, then be assured that the people who wrote the transitional document feel the same way. It is the convening and future conferences who hold the trust to resolve these matters. I expect they will steward their trust as well as our transitional body has done with theirs. The restoration of the church will not be completed in one conference. The late Dr. Abrams wisely observed it will take a generation to recover what has been lost. The convening conference will accomplish a great deal towards that goal, and she will lay a solid foundation. It must leave some work for another people on another day. It will also undoubtedly make some small errors that the future conferences must remedy. We all have much to learn from each other, and we must be patient with each other in the process. So far, yeah, I'm not against anything he's saying, so this is great. I don't know if he's even correcting me yet. I think he is, though. I read the end of this article. Because I see how well the boat is being built, I tend to rail against those who start poking holes in it. Okay, here he might be. If any would accuse our stewards of breaking trust, then it is incumbent upon them to demonstrate the specific harm. It is insufficient to suggest what could have happened or what might possibly occur. Because something could have happened that way does not mean that it did. And because something might possibly happen in the future does not mean it ever will. God save such people from ever serving on a jury as those who will condemn on could have and might possibly. When you bring a charge before the whole church, then present the specific, uncontestable, actual harm. We must not let impatience entice us to bring a charge before an injury has occurred. So and he hasn't called me out by name. He could be talking about somebody else. I have no idea who he could be talking about. For me, I'm the one who has spoken publicly, taking issue with the process of not allowing the episcopal candidates to be interviewed by anyone other than denominational authorities. So I think he might have just misunderstood. I'm not making allegations that anyone has done anything wrong other than designing a system that's opaque. So I'm just, and I think he does address this more later, but I don't think that, I do think that some of the Episcopal candidates probably do have ambitions for longer service than 2 years, and those people were explicitly instructed not to be put in this position. So that's something that I think we do have to explore. And but if that's leveling a charge of sin against them, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying we designed a system that is allowing for abuses, and he's saying it's wrong, I think, to take issue with the system because it could have abuses. Rather, one needs to wait until the abuses take place before one then raises the alarm. But that's, I guess that would be a fundamental disagreement point if that's what he's saying. He continues, the transitional stewards of our church have set before us candidates for interim bishops. They have simultaneously set before us a process for amending that list or avoiding transitional bishops altogether. The church may even choose to reject any office of bishop. The transitional leadership have imposed nothing on anyone, but have fulfilled their charge as far as they may go and no further. This is right and faithful. So yeah, he's right. There's a process the TLC is in favor of and making way for. There's an alternative process put forward by J. Therrell and the Floridians, and then there's also the option of having no bishops, which doesn't sound realistic to a lot of people. So the question is, whenever the institution is throwing itself behind one thing, then what dynamics are at play that allow for other options to be entertained equally or fairly? I think it's fairly obvious that once the TLC supports something, that gives it a huge benefit. And that is probably okay, actually. I'm not making the case for absolute fairness in all ways. I would be against presenting what is happening as absolute fairness in all the ways. But even so, I'm glad that we have the right to not go with them if we don't like it. So that, to my mind, they might have the best plan. We just have to be able to kick the tires on it first before we vote on it. And so when they're saying, no, you can't kick the tires, that's when there's a problem. If you don't know that reference, it's like when you buy a new vehicle, just check out all the different features and investigate it, And so there's a saying, you never look a gift horse in the mouth. And I think that saying means somebody might give you a horse, but it might be a really crappy horse, but you got to look in their mouth to figure that out, if it's a good gift or it's a lemon. So you have to be able to scrutinize what's offered to you. And if you can't do that, then you might have a great horse, you might have a great car, or you might have a lemon, and you just don't know it because they got to present at what angle you could look at it, I like this metaphor. He says, I see deficiencies with the list and the process. I do not attribute them to a breach of trust, but to the nature of the work and fallibility of the process. The deficiencies have remedies that do not require accusations. I am disturbed that the process resulted in only one candidate from outside of the United States. I trust that the conference will use the means which our stewards have provided them to remedy this situation. I'm persuaded that when the list of candidates for bishop is completed, we could draw names from a hat until the vacancies are filled, and we would have an excellent episcopacy. If I were the type to offer resolutions, I would make such a proposal. I think he has a higher estimation of the quality of our clergy than I do. I can say this even though there is one candidate whom I believe is in serious error on at least one point. We have a candidate whose teaching on Eucharist appears to be steeped in what I describe as the whimsical, trivializing, indiscriminate administration that we were all indoctrinated in through the UMC. Anyone who knows anything about me knows how critical that issue is to me. I sure wish he would say the name. Anyone who knows, nonetheless, I believe he would be, okay, so it's one of the males, not a female, he would be a good choice for bishop. While I perceive him to be in the shadows on a matter where I've seen light, I also know he has light in places where I am in shadow. Further, I expect he is as open to correction as I am. I don't know why you would expect that. We are a people in recovery. We all have much to learn from each other, and we must be patient with each other in the process. Yes. So It's weird how you can agree with someone on like 99% of stuff, but the devil's in that 1% detail. And well, and I would agree, you can't accuse people, oh, Keith is at the top and he just wants this, or this is in his heart, or anyone making these decisions at the top, here's their agenda, and here's what they've done so far that I suspect that's completely inappropriate. But if one of us crying foul that, hey, we are all in recovery, we just saw how bad things can get whenever you don't design a process that is accountable to the people. So I'm crying foul and saying, hey, we need to be able to kick the tires. Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if his problem's with me or if he's just with someone else. Okay. How can I know these things about the candidate or any of the candidates? How can I be comfortable with their fitness for the work? This is back to the article. Because a candidate for bishop in the GMC must be an elder, and every elder who might reasonably be considered for bishop has an easily accessible trail documenting the evolution of their theology and practice. If they haven't published a book or written for scholastic journals, then they at least have a blog or videos of sermons, devotionals, and Bible studies. I'm not moved by how quickly someone comes up with an answer to a hypothetical problem in an interview. Okay, I think he is talking to me. I want to know how well they respond after meditating on it for a day. It is that body of work together with the reputation within their community that I rely upon. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that might be a place of fundamental disagreement because I just think tailoring an image is really easy. And we have a notion of what it is that people want to see and hear. I think an off-the-cuff response does show the principles one holds. And so when we're putting someone in a position where they're holding a trust, then I think we have to see that they have good, solid principles that they can rely on. Because, there are all these dynamics of power that set in whenever one enters into an office where people naturally want to reinforce what is initially proposed. Not all the time. But yeah, okay, so for him to say, it doesn't seem very important to see their initial reactions to something in an interview. I find that very strange. And that the best way to figure out what a person is about is the things that they've had time to tailor for public consumption. That's exactly how duplicitousness and deception work, is they have a public image that they get to tailor, and then they have a different person that they are in private. And the only way to see who they are in private, the concern is that we are going to get people in the office that are actually not up to the standards of righteousness that we would expect. And the only way to try and discern that, it's still not 100%. People can still have a mask that they put on or an affect, but the only way to even test that is to put them in a situation where we're at least trying to get at who are you in your daily life. So I find that increasingly strange as I think about it, the notion that how they would behave in an interview is just not all that helpful. Like, why do presidential debates? Well, and I guess there are some people saying debates aren't helpful now. I think that's so silly. Why do interviews with presidents? Why have the press corps? We do these things because they are revealing and we want to see. Now, can they be co-opted? Sure. Which is why you need multiple entities doing this part of the process. But to say that part of the process is not particularly fruitful or helpful is really weird. I don't get that. He says, I reviewed every one of the candidates by researching them at a leisurely pace over a few days. I was already familiar with most of them, but thought it was wise to catch up on their recent activity. I realized not every member of the church will do that much work, but anyone who has assumed the responsibility of delegate to the conference has absolute moral obligation to do so or to turn their seat over to someone who will. Good. Whether one does or does not, one must not blame their ignorance on some imagined nefarious act of another. So, okay, what Sweat is saying is each of these guys and gals has plenty of stuff online for you to discern who they are. They don't need to do anything else for you. If you're too lazy to look up all their stuff to get their positions, then that's your problem. But you don't need Jeffrey Rickman sitting down with them doing this stuff. You need to just be less lazy. That should end the essay, Sweat says, but I will not end this discussion without a word about transparency and accountability. I honor the concept of open meetings and plain speech. I also honor the concept of private reflection and confidential counsel. I do not expect our new general rules to require every Global Methodist to wear a 24-hour GPS tracker and live by body cam, nor our clergy, nor our bishops, nor our committee members. Have our work groups had private discussions? Have its members reached out confidentially to people not on the committee? Have they considered proposals without advertising that they were considering such an idea? Mercy, I hope so. They would be irresponsible fools if they did not. I have the right to test an idea with a trusted confidential listener without you or anyone else ever knowing about it. I have the right to present to a committee an idea so stupid that I don't realize how stupid it is until I hear my voice saying it out loud. I deserve the right to do that, retract the idea, and start over without being condemned by a social media mob for what could have or might possibly. I have the right and responsibility. You have that right and responsibility. Every member of the church work group has that right and responsibility. Transparency comes when the final work product is presented, not imposed, with the process to analyze it and adequate time to repair or replace it if desired. And that is exactly what the transitional teams have done every step of the way. I'll read the final paragraph and then I'll come back. I have seen how beautiful the church can be. I have a vision of a renewed and restored church being birthed into the world. I see a beautiful boat that will carry us through this world and into the next. I tend to rail at anyone who would poke holes in it. So I would acknowledge I think I see what can be, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I'm trying to protect what can be against not individual people that I have discerned are evil, but against tendencies in groups that I can't help but notice seem to take place whenever groups form. One of the things that people do in order to dismiss an idea is to, what's it called? It's not scarecrow, straw man it. They make it so ridiculous as to become just unentertainable. So to provide a scenario where we're putting GPS trackers and body cams on all people even remotely attached to church leadership is a ridiculous notion. Nobody's proposing that. I am proposing levels of transparency that the UMC did not have. And that a lot of institutions don't have. And I'm doing that because I see what happens when they're not in place. And it's not that the people have bad intentions, and I hope I've been very clear about this. I don't think anybody has bad intentions. It's to say that this system can easily go wrong and makes room for nefarious or misguided leadership is not to say that the current leadership is nefarious or misguided. In my local church, we have an endowment fund, which we wanted to move over to the new financial institution, Guidestone. But Guidestone doesn't protect funds the way that Westpath did. Westpath, or at least the foundation office that we went through with Westpath, had very clear stipulations under which we could access this money and how much we could access at a time and what the process had to be to access it. Guidestone is, hey, the person with the account, they can move the money anytime that they want in any amount that they want. And our board just said, no, we trust each other right now, but, we need to be kept in check, and then future generations need to be kept in check so that they can't just liquidate this fund anytime that they want. This is for the perpetuity of the church, not for them to splurge. So we did not invest with Guidestone. We invested with another financial institution that will honor the stipulations that we put on how that money is going to be accessed. One could take offense to that and say, Pastor Jeffrey is great, and our board chair is great, and I don't know a single person on that committee who has not poured themselves out for this church. And it really is wrong-headed to say that these people need to be kept in check by something outside here that is going to make them uncomfortable. They've been given a trust. We need to trust. He didn't say we need to trust anywhere in this, but he did say they've been given a trust and a stewardship. They've behaved honorably so far. To cry foul at this point is to poke holes in the ship. To use that same metaphor, I'm I'm thinking that the flood is coming and that there might be holes in the ship that are being built that way. And I'm saying we need to close these holes. So it sounds like we're in a very deep place of disagreement. And he is dismissing my concerns by caricaturing them. He just wants everything to be open. There is surely a role for private conversations, just not in an official capacity, in my opinion. Any results coming from private conversations I'm wary of. Yes, talk to your spouse at home, talk to trusted confidants, but whenever it comes time to committees doing the work, that confidential reflection, I think, should already be done. And then the reflections in the committee, I don't think they all have to be gold. And some of them can be really stupid. Heck knows, I've said some really stupid things. But I just think we need to have leaders who are comfortable looking stupid for the sake of seeking truth. And then I also think we just have to clear out from the GMC people who freak out and flip their lid as soon as somebody says something stupid or concerning. If we're worried about mobs of people on the internet, I mean, yeah, that worries me too. It worries me that we would have people called Global Methodists who behave that way. So this is why I'm wanting to clear out the church of reprobates. They're always going to find something. They're always going to find something to flip out about. And so, to my mind, the job of the institution is to just do everything above ground. And then when people are uncharitable and nasty in the way that they react, just show them the door. And then what will happen is, something I said in worship yesterday, church doesn't work unless we can be gracious with one another. So we have to have leadership that's willing to be seen in places where they don't get to determine all the factors involved and how they're seen. And then we have to be charitable with them whenever they are less than perfect. And then we have to figure out where that line is where, okay, they're less than perfect, or no, they really have some problematic things that we need to go a different route here. And that does happen. History is replete with people who find themselves in places of position that should not be. And they do so because they learn to move the gears of power so that they don't have to be responsive to scrutiny. So that's the fundamental issue here that I don't think has been treated in this article. I think the closest he gets is, so far, they've done a bang-up job. They've done really good. All they owe us is submitting their work in a way that can be critiqued and undone later. And I think that more is owed, especially whenever we come out of what we've come out of. So I could be wrong, but I think we should at least have the conversation out in the open. And I suspect that most of the grassroots GMC people are very much in favor of an approach more like mine, and that most would actually be quite uncomfortable with Keith Sweat's approach. I need to put his stuff to the test. I need to look if each Episcopal candidate has been as publicly available as he presents here. It is unreasonable to expect, in my opinion, for people to be putting more than 3 hours of work into researching each Episcopal candidate. Moreover, when you're trying to consider what's important about each one, sure, okay, so maybe sacramental authority, theology is really important, and maybe you can find that pretty easily. But what if your concern is, hey, these positions were designed to just be interim, not long-term? I need to know if this person has aspirations for more long-term service, but they haven't addressed that anywhere. Well, now we've got a place where we could ask them, So there are certain questions that only become pertinent right now that they may not have ever spoken to. So I think I've addressed a lot of this article, and I'm almost certain he was talking about me. But if I was, you're so vain, I bet you think this song is about you. If I vainly assumed that he was talking about me and he was talking about somebody else, then I repent. Anyway, I hope this conversation goes forward. I'm not threatened by it. I just want people to treat my ideas seriously and not caricature them. So let's talk about the virtues of Maybe having interviews and more transparency would not yield the results that I think that it would. But if the best argument against it, the fear against it, is there will be mobs of social media people coming after us if we're more transparent, then I don't find that particularly convincing, for the reasons I stated before. And then there's also just a populist critique of, if what you're saying and doing in private just doesn't look good, if an outside observer would look at it and just not be very pleased, then it probably shouldn't be going on. Like if fear of the Lord doesn't move you to behave righteously, then fear of other people can be a good thing. Whenever I married my wife and she saw everything that I did, it was really good for me. And I think it'd be really good for us to see how the gears of power are working. Everybody saw my interview with Beth Ann Cook, where she talked about the process they've been going through. It did nothing but build trust and earn respect. There's no reason why it couldn't be the same for the Episcopal candidates. And so I do hope the institution changes its mind. He sees the boat being built, but why can't everyone else see the boat being built? I think, anticipating he would say, because they're not looking. All this stuff is online. You can find it if you look. And I would just say, web searches are really hard. Navigating the internet's really hard. And if your participation in the church is contingent upon you navigating the internet well, okay, you can do that, but it's not going to work out. Patrick says, I don't know if any of the candidates have designs on longer service. What I would say is, given the caliber of many on this list, I think it would be incredibly short-sighted for some of them not to be available to the GMC as a bishop beyond 2 years. Well, it just... There was a decision that was made on the part of many annual conferences not to submit leaders that fit the bill for what was described whenever they put out this ask. Why? And then whenever they refused to do that and they insisted on sending people who were younger, who would obviously be positioned for much longer service, why did they agree to that when that was clearly not the intent of the original instructions? In that event, it seems strange to not at least have the concern that some of these people are not honoring the process as it was set out. Ben says, does everyone need to see the sausage being made? Theoretically, no, but can't blame folks for recovering from bad sausage for asking questions. Well, you can't make people sit down and watch the sausage being made. The question is, can you at least see the process? So no part of me wants to make people sit down in front of their TV and watch me interview all 9 Episcopal candidates and whatever additional ones get added on. The question is, will the resource be available? And the answer so far is no. Lisa says, it bothers me most that they were told not to interview. If they wanted to, then why not allow them? Part of the problem in the UMC was the silencing of voices by the institution, and that's absolutely correct. Yep. As I said to Leah Hitty Gregory, she commented publicly on a post of mine on Facebook and said, look, for me, this would not be good spiritually. I don't want to be campaigning at all. And I said, that's fine. I'm not entitled to an interview with you. I absolutely think you should be able to follow your conscience in whatever way you want. It's whenever you impose that on others in the process, which I believe is happening. I can't speak to any specifics there, but when there is a collective decision to erect a wall between the people and those who are potentially making important decisions in the future, then I'm incredulous that more people are not instantly concerned, because this, how far are we going to take this? Everybody is capable. They've all said their vows. They're all good pastors, and we can trust in our leadership. That just seems so crazy. That seems so crazy to me. In that event, it's like you're building a ship and you're like, we don't need a whole side of a ship here. And don't walk around in it, or we built it, but don't walk around and examine and see if it's there. I would call that fairy tale thinking, whenever you just think it's magically going to work out and you haven't done the work to make sure that it does. Dee says the bishop's position is very important. It requires much discernment of the body. Yeah, right. And she says it's not campaigning, it's introducing themselves to the body. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. If you can't present yourself to people without campaigning, that is a huge problem. You know, if you are automatically, and you see this with some clergy, that they cannot interact with people in a pastoral capacity without putting on some kind of affect, you know, where you'll be talking with them privately and they can level with you, but then they step out and they're in the sanctuary with some people, and they're composed in a certain way, and they're quite magnanimous and well put together in their speech, and you know, it's that sort of thing that turns me off. You know, I see clergy like that, and they can be clergy like that, but I don't want to be buddies with them. You know, that tells me that they have the energy for misleading people and presenting something as though it were, but it might not necessarily be. So, you know, this is something that's obviously important to me as a pastor. I hope it comes through as I put myself out here. I'm the same person off camera as I am on camera. And then for those of you who've watched me preach, I'm the same person in the pulpit than I am out of the pulpit. And I think this is the standard for all true believers, is that we don't, you know, Jesus corrected the Pharisees for being one way inside themselves and another way outside of themselves. You know, you worry about cleaning the outside of the cup, but inside is all kind of stuff. At what point are we going to let Jesus speak to us and go, oh, we need to have higher standards for our clergy and bishops than we have had in the past? I think that's the lesson before us. And if that means that we don't get people with as great a public image as what we want, I can live with that. I hope the rest of the GMC can live with that.